Welcome back to ESBR Boxing's YouTube channel. Delighted, as always, to be joined by Paul Kelly. We are in review slash what's next mode as we saw Luis Alberto Lopez record the 30th win of his professional career against Ria Abe in New York last night via eighth round stoppage. Paul, dominating performance. I think it was an unfortunate cut in the second round over Abe's eye. Um, that's yeah, it kind of didn't help things in his favor. But yeah, another win. We like without pulling our own tooting our own horn. Yeah, we did kind of predict a KO win for Lopez, and that happened without any doubt last night. What did you make of it?
Yeah, mate, I think, as you said, they're not to blow our own trumpet, but I think both of us in the final predictions video did say that, stoppage was likely to come mid to late, which is obviously when it came in the eighth. And yeah, I mean, I've said with yourself, I've said with Elliot Grigg before, I do believe Luis Alberto Lopez is the best featherweight on the planet. And I think just the way he fights and his style, he's so difficult to prepare for. Like you genuinely don't know what's coming next. Like looking back at it when he beat Josh Warrington, I actually think, you know what, Warrington actually did really well in that fight. And it was really close. Since then, Luis Alberto Lopez has just been almost flawless, really. Obviously lost a few rounds at the back end of the Joey Gonzalez fight, but this was just pure domination. We did have our question marks over Abe and whether, what it would be like fighting out of Japan for the first time. What sort of level had he fought at? Biggest win was obviously Kiko Martinez, who was nearing the end of his career. So we were kind of questioning the level, and I think Luis Alberto Lopez showed the difference in between one of the best 126 pounders in the world and then the level kind of below that. Yeah, as you said, mate, dominant performance, exciting fighter, Luis Alberto Lopez. He doesn't just coast fights as well; he tries to take you out of there, which is always refreshing for fighters down at 9 stone or whatever it is. So yeah, I think he's a real problem in the featherweight division, and as I've mentioned a few times, it could be the number one there.
Yeah, for sure. I think one thing that I really noticed last night was I don't think Lopez really cared about what was coming back at him. I think he did get hit a couple of times, but I think he just knew that Abe couldn't hurt him. However, I think if he was to face like a Nick Bull or a Ray Vargas, it'll be interesting to see how he approached that fight because they're gonna they punch hard. Those guys basically they've got both got good KO percentages and yeah, I think it goes without saying that all like Lopez's eyes are going to be on March the 8th and to see what happens in that fight. I think that's the fight people want to see. I know we touched on that during our final predictions video. So we'll see if that fight happens. See if that fight can happen next in the unification fight. We'll give a quick mention to Ray Ford, who had a stunning win over Kolmatov last night, winning the round, winning the fight in the last seconds of the final round. However, just worth mentioning, he has kind of made it quite clear he's done at featherweight, so it's unlikely we're going to see that unification fight. However, what a fantastic fight that would have been after the style in which Ray Ford won against Kolmatov last night. One name I do want to mention with you, Paul, one guy who's been inactive, been out the ring for a year now, Brandon Figueroa. Um, One of the possibly the best featherweight in the world without a world title. Is that a fight you can see happening? Is that a fight you want to see? Give us your thoughts on that one.
Yeah, I love that fight. I really do. Again, I've been quite high on Brandon Figueroa of late. By him being very inactive, I thought the Fulton fight was really close, but down at Super Bantam. And I thought that, yeah, he's a huge featherweight as well. And Lopez is probably your standard kind of sized featherweight, but like Brandon Figueroa was massive. So I would kind of like to see how that matches up stylistically. Brandon Figueroa as well, not a concussive puncher, but I think Luis Alberto Lopez would have more respect for what's coming back from Figueroa than what we saw against Abe for sure. Definitely a fight that I want to see. The only thing I would say is, I think if you're Luis Alberto Lopez, you want a unification now. Let's be honest. So whether or not Ray Ford vacates and moves up, and the vacant belt is on the line for that fight, for example, as long with Alberto Lopez's IBF title. Obviously, we don't know how that works with the governing bodies and stuff, but I think now for Luis Alberto Lopez, although that fight really, does a lot for me, I think he'll be sitting thinking, do you know what? I've made three defenses of my world title now. It's time to unify. It's time to try and become undisputed or whatever. And he's well within his rights to do that, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I think so. I think there's also the Espinosa Robsy Ramirez situation. As I said to you on Friday, I'm not sure what that is. I still don't know what's going on with those guys. Fought 2 months, I think it's 3 months ago now, actually. So we're kind of waiting to hear news on their next steps. So we'll see. Lopez has been at featherweight for a while now, 6, 7 years. I'm sure it's crossed his mind about stepping up in weight. Um, if he is to step up in weight, I think a big kind of like a super fight, you could almost call it, would be against Emmanuel Navarrete.
Oh yeah.
Navarrete, kind of the number one super feather at the moment. It's been talk about him moving up to lightweight for his next fight. He can't really seem to settle at one weight division for some reason. Um, that would be a big fight, wouldn't it? I think that would be kind of one of the big fights of 2024. Not as big as kind of your Bivol Beterbievs or your Fury Usyks, but still kind of a massive fight. It would be Mexico against Mexico. Who would you be picking for that one, Paul? At super featherweight, who would your money be on?
Yeah, that's such a good fight. And I likened Emmanuel Navarrete a wee bit to sometimes what we see from Teofimo Lopez in the terms of
Mm.
when it's a fight that you think there's real jeopardy in, he pulls it out of the bag and he performs well. Fights where you think he will win and maybe, should be winning comfortably, he makes a real meal of and doesn't perform in, similarly to what with Teofimo Lopez has done recently. So it really depends on what Emmanuel Navarrete turns up. I feel like a fight against Luis Alberto Lopez would see one of the best versions of Navarrete. But man, I think Luis Alberto Lopez would win that fight. I would back Lopez to beat Navarrete. Um, I am quite high on Luis Alberto Lopez, especially after seeing him in the flesh. Mate, I just think he's a phenomenal fighter, and I'm all for him having these fights at featherweight, super featherweight. But yeah, the Navarrete fight definitely would do a lot. The whole, as you just said, Mexico v Mexico, like that's absolutely enormous. But yeah, I would probably lean towards Lopez. What are your thoughts on that one?
I would lean towards Lopez as well. I think Navarrete, yeah, as you said, he's a bit hot and cold. It's unclear what his strongest weight division in is. I don't know why he's talking about moving up in weight again. And I just think Lopez is on a pretty outstanding run of form at the moment. If you consider the fighters he's beaten, how he's beaten them, where he's beaten them, I think you can't forget went to Leeds, beat Josh Warrington, went to Belfast, beat Mark O'Connor, and those are not easy things to do. So yeah, I would edge towards Lopez, but a fantastic fight. And I think just a final comment from me on Lopez. I think a reason why people are so aware of him now and people like him is because he's active. He fights regularly. He's not one of these guys that fights once a year. He fights 2 times, 3 times a year, and that's what you want from a world champion, kind of in his prime at 30 years old. So great stuff. We'll see what's next for Luis Alberto Lopez. I'm sure he'll be back out in the ring again soon. Paul, thank you for joining me. And yeah, we'll definitely speak again soon.
Pleasure as always, mate. Cheers.